Riverdale Jewish Center with another installment of 8 at 8, celebrating Hanukkah during a pandemic in the most unusual of ways, by getting to know each other remotely through some interviews and questions and Hanukkah memories with some of our members. It's a special pleasure for me, for the sixth night of Hanukkah, to welcome Seth Avner to our series. Seth, welcome. Nice to have you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Okay, we're going to jump right in. I'm going to ask you 3 questions off the bat, and then we'll get into more of the details. So for those who are watching who don't know you very well, can you tell everybody, who you are, where you're from, how long you've been a member of the RJC, and maybe in what ways life in Riverdale is different than the way you grew up?
So I was actually born in Philadelphia, and we were there for the first few years of my life, but then my parents moved to Jersey, and I mainly just grew up in Teaneck. I am married to Dovid Adler, who is from Toronto. She grew up there, and then came here for college when we had met and then got married. And we have 3 kids, Rose, who's 5, Adira, who's turning 3, and then Yona, who just turned 1.
Great. I think it's really nice that Rose lets you use her Zoom account for tonight's interview.
Yeah, she's the primary one that uses this for her during school, whenever she, last year and during her, they had a 2-week period of quarantine when somebody in her class got it. So she's the primary user of Zoom in our family.
Okay, amazing. How long have you been a member of the RJC?
So we moved here in the summer of 2015. So we've been here for about 5.5 years, and we've been here since then, and I've been enjoying the community.
Amazing. We count the year you were here during COVID, even though Shul was closed. Otherwise, I would be here negative months, and that wouldn't really count for anything. Okay, so for many of us, Hanukkah brings back memories from our childhood. I'm sure it does for you as well. So which aspects of how you observe Hanukkah in your home are the same as the way you grew up, and in which ways is it different than your memories as a kid?
Well, in a lot of ways, I would say it's the same, that it was always a, very family-oriented holiday. We would always try to, make sure, even as we were getting older and and kind of doing our own things a little bit, but everybody would always try to be home and light together, and making the preparation of the oil and the candles and whatever we had done, as kind of part of the routine, and doing that as a family. And we do that now, even with the kids. We will make sure to, either Tova and I, whoever's home first, will have it as an activity of setting up the candles and everything. Both of our girls have their own Hanukkahs that they made, so they like to choose what color candle they have and put it in, and we try to make sure to light together every night. In terms of, I guess, ways that it's different, I don't know, we use, at least for me, we use a different Haner Halalu tune than growing up. We use from Tova's family.
The Nadler side picks the tune. Is that how it works?
It depends, but I don't know. My family didn't really have a real tune. It was kind of started off as a tune and then ended up just kind of reading the rest of it, or just saying the rest of it quickly. So it was nice to have a more, a tune throughout the entire thing.
It's amazing. And who hung that beautiful Happy Hanukkah sign right behind you?
I think that was probably Tova, and the girls did that.
Amazing. Okay, that's great. Our Haner Halalu tunes are changing over the years, but I try and do a mix of the old traditional ones, but embracing some change just the same. So one thing I noticed about you is that you often have your kids with you in shul, which is amazing. So what was it like making Shabbos meaningful for your kids when we were stuck home for so many months with shul being closed?
Yes, that's a great question. My kids have, in shul, people probably know my kids more than me because, they were kind of always in shul with me. And obviously they're much more fun and people enjoy talking to them more than they enjoy talking to me. But when we were at home, it kind of gave them the ability to talk more. When they're in shul, they're typically very quiet, but even when they do try to daven, the tefillah that they know, I kind of tell them to be quiet because it's interrupting other people. But here it was more of, I'm kind of able to go through it with them, sing everything out loud. I think certain times they would get tired of things, but I think overall it actually was probably more enjoyable for them to, kind of be home with me and have it tefillah tailored more towards them, which I was able to do a little bit more. So I think that was nice for them, but at the same time, it's also kind of, obviously we're all staying at home and doing our best not to go out. So being in the apartment, was a little bit more of a challenge just because, we were always there. When at least we go to shul, it's, not only do you get the shul experience, but you kind of go out and, it's a little bit more exciting. So, I had to try to come up with different ways to make it exciting for them, which I do think that they did enjoy.
And in our house, it wasn't the davening, even though we davened with our kids, but it was Shabbos miros that became much more of a focal point. Like our meals were on a totally different schedule and there was less of a rush. We weren't coming home exhausted from shul and rushing back to mincha. And our kids really picked up a lot of zmiros, all three of them, which is really, really amazing. And now we're sticking to it because we see how meaningful it was for them to sing with us and to learn the zmiros. And they're kind of picking up the rhythm of it, which is really amazing. So I did want to talk to you about the pandemic. I feel like you're qualified to weigh in from your experiences as a medical resident. So let's talk a little bit about that, about your training this past, I guess, year or so, what it's been like living through this and learning about COVID and the cases that you've been dealing with. Can you tell us a little bit about what your medical experience has been like the last half a year?
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm currently a second-year cardiology fellow at Montefiore. And obviously back in March and April and during the peak of this, the whole hospitals were basically just coronavirus patients. And there wasn't really even much cardiology going on during that time, so everybody was deployed to these coronavirus units. It's something that I don't think anybody was prepared for anywhere, but even in the medical community, it's not something that, nobody really, I guess you talk about disaster medicine sometimes, but nobody really talks about, or trains for a pandemic. So it was definitely very challenging. On a lot of different aspects, in the hospital and with the patients. And with coronavirus itself, there's so much uncertainty and confusion around it in terms of, what it actually does to the body, to all the different parts of the body, how you treat it. New information was coming out, every day. A new information would come out one day, and then, a week we would be doing that, and then a week later they would be saying, oh, this is incorrect, it makes things worse. So, there was just a lot of ambiguity around what the coronavirus does. So it was obviously a very difficult time in trying to stay on top of all the latest and newest information in terms of what to do to treat it. But I think overall it was very difficult, but the medical community has tried to do the best that they can with the information that we have. And then I think not just in the hospital, first of all, we were fearful for ourselves. We didn't know what it necessarily does. And especially in the beginning when we didn't have, necessarily adequate PPE. So that was obviously a difficult time. And then I think for everybody, but especially those with, families, and young kids at home, this was, our youngest was a few months at this time. And, you don't know necessarily what you're going to potentially bring home. I know Tova and I had discussed, especially when I was on these units most of the time, should I come home? Should I stay somewhere else? Should I stay in a hotel? The hospital was providing hotels for people that wanted to. But so I think that's a different aspect. For us, I came home. I think it was tough for Tova, who's a dentist, and the offices weren't open, so she was at home by herself with all 3 kids and kind of going insane. So I think that for us, the best thing was for me to come home, but I would take all the precautions necessary in terms of changing before I came home, when I came home, showering right away, and all these things. Being in contact with these patients. So I think it was very difficult on a lot of different levels, but you kind of get through it and do the best that you can with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different aspects of this that are really interesting. The change of information over time, how little we knew about the pandemic then versus how much we know now. I still, in my mind, remember when we were talking about COVID right before Purim, and our kids were already home from school because SAR was on precautionary quarantine. Not that we had any idea what that meant, but our kids were home. And I still remember being in shul for Megillah. I was in the base medrash minyan, and it was packed. There's no masks. And I think we were kind of telling people that maybe they should wash their hands when they went home. We had no idea what was happening. And from what happened then to where we are, in terms of our fluency with it, it's really amazing as a society. I mean, it's really amazing. But I think you guys should write a book, a doctor and a dentist survive a pandemic with 3 little kids.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting. But I think that the way that the shul and the community as a whole has handled this is, has been really great. And I think people, from what I see, it seems like people have been doing their part in terms of, making sure to try to minimize exposures.
Whenever I ask doctors, like how prepared were you for the pandemic in terms of your medical training? So people ask me, how are you prepared as a rabbi for it? And I was like, oh, on Fridays, we always had that pandemic class, before we did Parshas HaShavua. Not really, but at the same time, we learned so much from doing it. And I think you're right. The community's done a fantastic job. We've really just kind of followed suit and tried to be as responsible and conservative about things as we could. And the results in Riverdale in particular, for the most part, thank God, have been really good. So we have a lot to be proud of.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay, so let's talk about community, actually. That's a great segue. Community is a big part, of who we are. And even though, we're kind of on hold in a lot of ways, we're really proud of who we are as a community. You and Tova have been a part of the young couples community at the RJC for a while. So what are you missing? What are you looking forward to when things get back to normal? And do you think this is an opportunity for us maybe to do things differently or better when things are safer?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think shul is obviously a big aspect of, community and specifically our lives. And, obviously there's been a huge disruption in that during this time. But I think, when things do get back to normal, when we do, go back to having regular minyan, which I don't know, when that will be, I still think that it will probably be a while. But I think the social aspects of shul has been very much missing and lacking during this time. And obviously we go to shul to daven, but to be there, to go as a family, my kids go to groups. Some of the younger ones go to Tach Shabbat with Tova, and now you don't really have that, and you don't really see people as much, and it does make things a lot more difficult. I will say that I do enjoy the shorter davening. I don't know if I think that's pretty much the consensus of what at least people that I
just edit that out of the video, no problem.
I do wonder if if things will change, even when things do go back to normal, if there will still be a focus on kind of keeping minyan short, which I think there is, I think, some good in it in terms of decreasing the amount, more that there's more focus, decreasing the amount of other stuff such as talking, which I definitely, have enjoyed that aspect of davening a little bit more, the shorter minyanim.
One thing you can say for sure, this is just in our shul in particular, this is a fact. People come to shul on time now. The minyan's really short. Nobody's really sure where we're starting and how long it's going to last. And it doesn't matter if you come to 8:30 or if you come to 10. No, there's none of this business of like strolling in an hour into davening. You got to get there because you registered for 10 o'clock. And
Right.
I think that that has added a lot to the experience of pretty much being there beginning to end. And if 2.5 hours or more, it can't be done. So then maybe we are going to have to think creatively. I think you're right about that. That's okay. So you heard it here first. If it happens at the RJC, it'll have been because of this conversation. Okay.
I think also one of the other things that I'm looking forward to getting back to, and at least within the community and in RJC, is I played in the basketball league in RJC, and I think since COVID has started, I've basically done no physical activity. So I think kind of getting back to doing, normal things and to, playing sports again with other people will be definitely much, something that I'm definitely.
Could not agree more, 1,000%. All right, the hour is late. I'm gonna ask you one last question. I really appreciate you being here with me tonight. Let's go back to Hanukkah. So Hanukkah is a story of how a small group of heroes, can make a huge impact on their community, but also on all of Jewish history. When you think about the heroes in your life with everything you're experiencing this year, but more broadly, your entire life. So who are the heroes in your life and how have they inspired you?
Yeah, so I think, it's kind of a cheesy answer, but I think my parents and, specifically my father, who's also in healthcare. He's an pediatric emergency physician. And growing up, he was, and my mother's a pediatric nurse, and kind of medicine was always something that was being spoken about in our house. And, it was I kind of knew for a long time that that's what I wanted to do. And then it's not just though that it was spoken about, it's the excitement of it. Now a lot of people say like, oh, they don't want their kids going into medicine or anything like that. My father was the opposite. He just showed so much passion about, about what he did and how much he loved it. And, it really was something that, that I looked up to him to and forward to. And then also he was also a teacher and in academia, and he taught at Einstein for many years. And, going there, I've come across a lot and being in Montefiore now, I've come across a lot of people who he has taught, and I'm constantly reminded about, how great of a teacher and a physician that he is. I think, he's probably, somebody that I always looked up to and I continue to look up to. And then especially now going through, a pandemic and stuff like this, where he's dealing with a lot of this, on more of an administrative level, also, really get to see a different side of things, and, really something to look up to, and, has really paved the way for me.
Amazing. Okay, it's really beautiful. I hope your parents take time to watch this interview from the RJC. Seth, thanks so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. Happy Hanukkah to you. Hanukkah Sameach to everybody who's watching and tuning in throughout the entire series. Please stay tuned for more wonderful programming coming to you from the RJC. Have a wonderful evening. We hope to see everybody.